Welcome to the Loc'd Pop Talks podcast. I am your host, Tyree Wilson. And whether you are a man or a woman who is either married, separated, standing for your marriage, or divorced, this podcast is here to support you. What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of Loc'd Pop Talks. And you know Ty could not be gone for too long. This episode, I wanted to talk about a question I received from a member of the podcast, and that is to Cristian. Cristian is a married man who has been, me and him have talked many times through DMs and text messages and emails and stuff like that. So Cristian, this episode, I want to answer one of your questions that you posed to me over on Instagram. If you guys have any questions and you want to reach me on social media, if you haven't emailed me through the websites, Instagram is perfect. You can find me at Loc'd Pop, that's LOCDPOP, and send me your message and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And if you don't mind, what we may end up talking about will just end up on the podcast. So I'm going to read what Cristian said to me, you guys, so we can all be a part of this conversation, so that we can all, really kind of like work together on this one. Cristian mentioned to me that he had read Luke 6:45. And if you guys aren't too familiar with Luke 6:45, that's okay. I think we looked it up. Did we look it up? Let's look it up in the Bible, because I am not one of those people who just speak out of his face about the Bible. I don't know what version of the Bible you guys use. I use the King James version. I also use the NIV. So I'm going to read both for you guys. The King James version of Luke 6:45 reads as this: "A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil. For of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaketh." And that was the King James version. I'm going to read the NIV version, because I know that a lot of listeners may use the NIV version. I am one of those people, so I use the NIV version from time to time. It's a little easier translation for me, and so here it is. The NIV version says, "A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of." Again, that was Luke 6:45, and I meditate on that word. We meditate on that word and that scripture from God, because our last episode, I talked about how deep your heart is. For some of you listeners, and for me included, we have gotten as far as we can because our bodies and our hearts have refused to give up, even though, or in the face of, or in spite of, or despiting the trial, the test, the tribulation, the overwhelming weight of guilt, responsibility, and confusion, and not to mention the frustration of what it is that you're going through. I listened to an episode from another subscriber, Chris Bond. Chris, if you're out here, your boys definitely listen to your podcast or listen to your YouTube video. And Chris mentioned that it sucks. How fighting for your marriage sucks. And she's absolutely right. I totally agree. It does suck. Because there is a lot of things that are not within your control. There are a lot of things that are in your control, but because of where you are, the mindset, the thought of feeling like you're losing something, like your spouse, for whatever reason, you can't quite tell if what you're doing is going to work or not. You're not sure if this is going to work. Winning back the heart of your spouse, no matter where they are or what they're choosing to do, whether they are seeking divorce, whether they're pushing for it, they've gone after it, whether you're fighting them on the divorce or you're not necessarily fighting them, you're just kind of going along with it as to not create friction. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, to fight with your spouse, you better get ready for a big battle. And if you do not participate, then chances are you're thinking that things will not change because you don't participate, and that is a misguidance as well. It's a complete misguidance. You don't want to have to go through any of those things. So you might be left with the middle ground of let me participate as to not create friction, even though me participating only means that I'm going to not hinder or speed up the process of divorce. There's so many factors involved. You can't be worried about any of those, guys. You can't be worried about any of those things, because that's going to happen whether you want it to or not. It can happen first and foremost. And for some of us, it has happened. And for others, maybe it hasn't happened yet. Because I do believe this: if a spouse wants to be divorced from you, they'll find a reason. Even though they don't need one, they'll find a reason. But there's nothing to be distraught over. The point of listening to my channel, to listening to this podcast, is to understand that you have a life that is important as well. That you may have more than enough responsibilities to take on, and people that are counting on you to make it through another day. So don't lose yourself, don't lose your faith, don't lose your heart, don't lose your composure, and don't lose your trust in God based off of what's happening in the present as of here and right now. There are things that you can do. That's why I do the podcast. There are things that you can do. However, to get back to the point, Cristian also sends me a quick question. Have you ever dealt with somebody who had immense guilt over their past actions? To answer your question, Cristian, that answer is yes. It's a loud and emphatic yes. Because I believe this, you guys. If you are going through guilt or feeling responsible for the things that you may have contributed to your marriage or the breakdown of the marriage, then you are dealing with somebody. You're dealing with yourself. And me, myself personally, I felt like I was dealing with myself. Now, I'm not going to say I accept everything that happened between me and my wife. I'm saying I learned to accept the things that I contributed to the marriage. And I eventually, and in the podcast that I did with my wife, Tiffany, I even revealed to her, you guys, I told her something she didn't even know. I revealed to her that one of the issues I had in our marriage that I was afraid to talk about was my, how I felt about my birthday. Now, did my family celebrate my birthday? Of course they celebrated my birthday and stuff like that. However, I paid attention to women who did not have boyfriends or husbands talk about what they would do for their husbands and boyfriends if they had one. Right? Everybody's perfect. Everybody's the perfect boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, fiance, whatever, partner when they don't have one. It's only when people end up with a spouse and a partner you realize what you really got. It's kind of like you play your favorite sport, or you finally went to your favorite concert or something like that, and it was disappointing. You weren't that happy about it. You just thought it was going to be the perfect thing, and then you get into it and it's not what you thought it was going to be. Regardless of what happened, I had to take responsibility for my actions and my attitude towards Tiffany for something that I expected her to be responsible for. Right? So when she didn't do those things, or I felt disappointed or whatever like that, or I felt left down, I then had a choice. I could have brought those things up to her right then and there in a moment, or maybe I could have chosen them on a date that was different than my birthday. Or maybe I should have been more vocal about the things that I wanted to do, if I wanted to do anything, instead of expecting her to just jump on those things. See, at some point there's nothing wrong with taking responsibility for your actions. It's just, once you take responsibility for them, it's your choice. What do you do after you speak up about them? Once the chips have fallen, are you willing to clean up the mess? If you're not willing to clean up the mess, then the responsibility is just out there, and you're going to carry it around everywhere you go, and you're not picking anything up, and you may not know it, but you're sending a strong signal to your spouse that even though I do acknowledge what's happening, I have no intention of letting it go or how to make it better. So with that being said, if you are willing to take on the responsibility and turn that weight into something you can, into your own little personal platform or podium that you can stand on and speak from with experience, the guilt should dissipate. I'm not going to say it will. I don't know if it will. It all depends on your personal willpower. However, it should dissipate, because when you're finally ready to take responsibility for what you've done, like if I had to explain this, because obviously, the audience is guys, and the women chime in from time to time about what's going on with them. Guys, imagine if Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant took responsibility. They wanted to take responsibility for hitting the game-winning shot, and they shot the shot and they missed. They might feel guilty. They might. But they will always take responsibility for that missed shot. Whether it was made or not, they'll always take responsibility for it because they called for the ball. As a man, in the home that you have created, in the home that you have built, in the home and the family that is a part of your life now, you have created something. You're now the star player. You're one of the star players. And when the ball is passed your way, or i.e. the test, or aka the test, or the temptation, whatever the case or form that